Hello, friends. I was asked to prepare a talk for today on the topic Living the Truth, Universal Unity. And I have to say that the process of preparing and reflecting upon such a magnificent ideal has been very enriching on its own. So I am very grateful for that already. Now I will share with you some ideas regarding first, the keywords of this topic, which are living on one side and universal unity on the other. First, I will start with a few excerpts that I have selected on universal unity so that we can set up a context of its role and its importance. And then I would like to focus on what it means to lead a life embracing universal unity from a theosophical perspective, and also from the practical point of view, meaning questions such as how we can try to incorporate it in our daily lives, what would be the natural consequences of living it, and what are some of the obstacles that we may face in the process. So to start with, I think we can agree that universal unity is probably the grandest ideal presented within theosophical teachings, as well as the fundamental essence in various ancient traditions. When considering the words universal unity, even from the human intellect, I think we can all grasp an idea of the cosmic dimension that it evokes far beyond our ordinary perception of life. Here I have selected a few references which emphasize the utmost importance of universal unity from theosophical perspectives. The first one is the first object of the Theosophical Society, which urges every member to lie in sympathy with making a conscious effort to create a nucleus of universal brotherhood of humanity, which is very much related with universal unity. I think this is so important to remember that this should be an active object rather than a passive one. I'm sure we all agree with this statement, but then we should also strive for finding ways and creating opportunities at every opportunity to make it active, to make of ourselves such a nucleus in our communities and in daily life. Now, the next one is the beginning of the HPB's diagram of meditation. First, conceive unity by expansion in space and infinite in time. This practice of conceiving universal unity in the higher mind and its reflection and contemplation may be helpful to gradually develop an avenue towards perceiving perhaps a glimpse of such unity. This is a quote of Robert Bowen's notes regarding the necessary approach to study the secret doctrine. And here again, emphasis is made upon the importance of letting the mind hold to the idea of unity of all beings. Finally, the voice of the silence also refers to the union with the silent speaker that is necessary before the soul can comprehend and remember, meaning to know what is real. Overall, from these examples and many others that can be found, it stands out how universal unity is so emphasized upon and pervades as the ultimate essence of philosophical teachings and doctrines. Therefore, it is worthwhile to dwell on it on a regular basis, And that brings us to the question of what it means to lead a life embracing universal unity. So here are a few aspects of what I am going to talk regarding some ideas. First, it is useful to have a proper understanding of what are the obstacles that prevent us in the first place from experiencing universal unity as the ultimate goal in the spiritual path of perfection. For that, to consider the principles that govern the constitution of man can help to understand its dual nature, both in theory and, most importantly, in practice. Here I will use a graphical and simple analogy to represent the relationship between the individuality and the personality, although we are all familiar with the 7 principles. So if we consider the process of taming a horse, then the horseman represents the individuality, the observer, and who knows, while the horse represents the personality and the body, the doer. The horseman takes the horse for training once he sees some traits that qualify him, and when the horse or personality shows the willingness to acknowledge and yield to his master. But before those conditions are there, it's very difficult to tame the horse, since it is still subjected to abidia. But when training begins, little by little, the horse learns to perceive his master's will and directions. And gradually, little by little, he learns to be more ready to respond, even to subtler movements, until eventually it reaches a stage where he is completely aware and united with his master's will, which would be the higher self or the divine will. At that point, they are one, meaning that there is complete trust and renunciation by the horse because he acknowledges that his master knows and consequently takes care of what is needed. So there is no place for worrying or self-centeredness or having conflict, personal sufferings, and so on. So the horse is free of all that, and these things cease completely when the horse is one with the horseman. This process of taming can also represent the opening of Antakarana, the bridge between the lower self and the higher self. As we know, the personality or lower quaternary carries with it skandhas or strong tendencies from past causes, which may tend to be in this harmony with the divine self. And so the task that we have before us is to cultivate a connection with the nature of the higher self, despite the obstacles that represent past tendencies. Then the next question would be how to develop or to accelerate the process towards such state of union, how to set the adequate conditions to nurture it, to tread the path of return, nivritti-marga. And it seems to me that one basic requirement to create fertile conditions would be watchfulness of the whole microcosm that we are. A constant and vigilant watch is necessary once one has decided to pursue that path that leads to truth, since this is a process of changing one's nature from denser to subtler vibrations. And for that, we need to first realize all the intricacies of our own characters, and not just an intellectual understanding, but more an experiential awareness that comes into play with relationship and when the personality reacts to whatever surrounds it. Therefore, we must grow in awareness of all the inconsistencies and conflicts that there are between that ideal of universal unity, love and wisdom, and on the other side, our daily behavior. We can ask, how well do they match? How far we are from that ideal on our daily behavior? Actually, the more we tend to observe, subtler disharmonious reactions may emerge to the surface of our consciousness. And that is the first step, to be aware of all these impurities of our character so that we may choose to take charge if we commit to it. For example, by nurturing the opposite virtues. And this is a long-term endeavor, of course, and there is no reason to be overwhelmed by the realization of the enormous gap, how far we are from being perfect, from the perfect man. As long as we put in the effort and we try, just as the masters say, to harmonize all these multi-layered tendencies that pull us the opposite way. There is a quote by HPB that gives us some hope. And she says, conquered passions, like slain tigers, can no longer turn and rend you. And be hopeful, not despairing. With each morning's awakening, try to live through the day in harmony with the higher self. Try. One who does his best does all that can be asked. A powerful consequence of this conscious watchfulness is to realize that if our past history of bad causes makes our way today very challenging at some point, then we are also in the position to reverse our present choices to the kind that will add up to an inner strength of the higher self tomorrow and from now onwards. So a keen watchfulness and awareness are probably the cornerstones from which may follow a natural process of self-transformation and the growing developments of inner capacities, such as the one displayed in this slide, among others. In the Mahatma letters, it can be read that adepts are not made, they become. And this is a hint of the necessary active work involved in the process of becoming. Now, the next aspect that I want to talk about deals with how to practice universal unity, how to incorporate that essence into our daily lives and make it a living reality. This question has already been put forward since ancient times, and different traditions have described sets of good conduct in order to purify the character while persevering towards human perfection. A good example of such precepts are the Golden Stairs given by Madame Blavatsky in 1988. And in a very little few verses, there is a considerable amount of valuable instructions that we can consider, test, investigate, and examine in order to discover their meaning, not only in a superficial way, but in ever-deepening layers of inner realization in all spheres of action during daily life. So it may be at work, with family, friends, strangers, in daily life. This calls for continuous practice and is quite a task, but also a fascinating journey of discovery towards slaying the destructor of the real. Meaning the causes that generate ignorance, separation, differentiation, resistance, and so on. By meditating, for instance, on each day, one verse, and by turning our attention regularly to the highest realities, by elevating our thoughts as well as our noblest emotions, is a key exercise and practice, so that it may become a way of life. So it is as necessary as we have to eat and rest through the day. We should reach to a point that it is necessary, it is vital for us to nurture this living in the elevated, the higher mind, to elevate it by elevating our thoughts and emotions too. Also, the law of action-reaction can be observed in different planes of existence, because whatever we put in motion, there is a reaction always. So when we direct our attention and power of thought to a specific question with due intensity and will, chances are that circumstances may result in unveiling some answers for what we are seeking, if we have a keen eye for that. This is a beautiful aspect of the universal unity, because it is a living thing. We move and life moves with it, and the possibility of taking part by collaborating actively is a precious thing to imagine, really. Here I would like to share a fragment from Madame Blavatsky regarding the sense of responsibility. The feeling of responsibility is inspired by the presence of the light of the higher ego. As the ego in its cycle of rebirths becomes more and more individualized, it learns more and more by suffering to recognize its own responsibility, by which it finally regains self-consciousness, the consciousness of all the egos of the whole universe. We should therefore always endeavor to accentuate our responsibility. The feeling of responsibility is the beginning of wisdom, a proof that ahamkara, the sense of I, is beginning to fade out, the beginning of losing the feeling of separateness. The sense of responsibility probably makes things easier for us as it develops, because if you perceive your place in the whole scheme of evolution, then you become more aware of the interrelationship between all stages and kingdoms of life. So naturally, one may feel more and more driven to become a co-worker with the one life, just as the horse ultimately surrenders with voluntary obedience to the horseman, in the analogy that was presented before. This renunciation of the I-ness probably is the most challenging, and as it would mean a revolution on how we perceive life. But unity knows no center, and therefore the sense of I must go eventually at some point. In the meantime, since we are not yet there, I believe it's also important to acknowledge the role of the heart being the organ through which the higher ego acts. As said also by HPB in one of her quotes. So the motive of our actions should originate at the highest of our awakened principles. Then, if we persevere to embrace universal unity, it may become a beneficent underlying force in all that we do, in all the planes of existence in which we act. Then, well, to conclude, I would like to I would like to share this very familiar quote. I'm sure all know this, but it is one of the jewels, I think, that Madame Blavatsky left us for those who are treading the path or want to go in this direction. There is a road, steep and thorny, beset with perils of every kind, but yet a road, and it leads to the very heart of the universe. There is no danger that dauntless courage cannot conquer. There is no trial that spotless purity cannot pass through. There is no difficulty that strong intellect cannot surmount. For those who win onwards, there is a reward past all telling, the power to bless and save humanity. For those who fail, there are other lives in which success may come. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to hearing ideas from all of you next. Thank you.